Fell in love with my ex-wife's sister, who's still grieving her husband, and my son's wish sparks hope and fear. I've been in love with this woman for a very long time, maybe a couple of years now, and I find myself completely torn. Should I try to kill these feelings, or is there a way to actually turn this into something real with her? Let me start from the beginning. I met my ex-wife, her sister, when I was just 23, and our relationship took off at lightning speed. By the time I was 26, we were married and had our son and daughter. But our marriage fell apart almost as quickly as it began. Just months after our wedding, I discovered she was having an affair. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal, it was that the man she cheated with introduced her to heroin. When I confronted her, she promised to get help, but instead of turning her life around, she disappeared one night. It's been 4 years since I've seen her. I only hear distant, shaky rumors that she's still with that same guy, somewhere homeless in Las Vegas. I haven't bothered to track her down, nor do I want to after everything she did. My priority has always been my kids, keeping things together for them. I got a divorce in absentia, cutting the last tie. Despite how things ended, I maintained a great relationship with my ex's family. My kids spend every other weekend with their grandparents, and I'm still treated almost like a son. They invite me to all the family Christmas parties, and everyone seems to genuinely like having me around. My ex-wife isn't mentioned anymore, mostly for my kids' sake, to spare them the pain. My son, who's now 9, has had such a hard time with his mother leaving. He told me once he hoped she was dead. Her verbal abuse near the end left scars, and he was only 5 or 6 then. I had to get him therapy because his pain runs that deep. Everything shifted after my ex left. In the year that followed, her sister, let's call her, and her boyfriend started coming by a lot. They helped out with the kids, babysitting sometimes, which they called practice for when they'd eventually have kids of their own. The kids adored them, and honestly, their presence brought some much needed sunshine into our lives. After a while, she and her boyfriend got married, so much love between them, and then tragedy struck. Her husband died in a workplace accident only a short time after their daughter was born. The pain rippled through everyone, but none more so than her. I wanted to support her the way she had supported me, so I started watching her daughter when she needed some space. She's been in grief counseling for years now, but you can see the loss. She still wears her wedding ring, and tells me she could never imagine dating again. We talk about her late husband all the time. I've watched her start to heal, but I know that part of her heart will always belong to him, and I can't even imagine the depth of pain. Over the last 2 years, our lives have become deeply intertwined. My kids adore their aunt, and she comes over for dinner often. Our daughters have become practically inseparable, sleepovers, giggles, drawings everywhere, like genuine sisters. By then, I believed I was over my ex-wife, but the idea of dating anyone else, especially after what happened with her, seemed too risky. Still, at some point, I started seeing her differently. She's handled so much hardship and still remains a wonderful, caring mother. Her humor instantly brightens my mood. And, unexpectedly, I realized I was physically attracted to her. It made me feel guilty sometimes. Her late husband was a good friend, and she's still grieving, but the feelings kept growing stronger. Since the start of COVID, we spent even more time together. With most people out of our social bubble, we leaned on each other more than ever. Nothing romantic has ever happened between us, and I make a conscious effort not to flirt. But last week, after the kids went to bed, I made us a few drinks, nothing too strong, and she decided to stay the night. I slept on the couch. The next morning, I woke up to the 4 of us having breakfast together, and for a moment, it felt like the real family I've always wanted. Before the whirlwind of the day started, she even kissed me on the forehead, which she's never done before. After they'd all left, I found my son quietly playing by himself and looking really down. When I asked what was wrong, he cut straight to the point in that honest way only kids have. He wishes she was his mom. I sat with him, wanting to understand, and he went on about how kind she is to him, how she never yells, how much he loves seeing her at his grandparents', and that she draws pictures with him, something I never knew. If my heart hadn't already melted for her, it would have then. Dropping the kids off at their grandparents' later, I tried to broach the subject with her parents, just to feel out how everyone would react if I were to be more serious about her. I made a half joke about how she and I sometimes act like a married couple. Their response was frosty. They didn't laugh and seemed standoffish, though still friendly. Maybe they suspect, maybe they disapprove, but it's hard to read. It's getting harder to ignore this or pretend it's not weighing down on me. I am in love with her, and I know I have to do something about it. Either find a way to bury these feelings, or somehow find the courage to tell her everything, despite how complicated it all is. I'm lost, unsure how to approach a widow, especially one who's still so much in love with her late husband, and who was married to my friend. But I know I can't go on much longer in this limbo, aching for her and pretending I don't care. Update 1. Shortly after I made my decision, I realized my kids were spending Sunday night at their grandparents' house, something we do every couple of weeks, so they can maintain a strong relationship with their mother's parents. My niece, my Sil's daughter, usually joins them for these visits. That night, I'd be completely free, and so would my Sil. Normally, I'd just spend the evening gaming or maybe hit the gym, but this felt like the perfect opportunity to see my Sil alone, without the kids around. I texted her, "Hey, kids are out this Sunday, was thinking you might want to get dinner? I picked a fairly upscale restaurant that had recently reopened for outdoor dining, a place I'd been wanting to try. I never ask her out to dinner. It's rare for us to spend any time alone without a child in the next room, so when she said she'd love to, that's when my nerves started up. I asked if she'd prefer to meet at my place and take one car together or meet at the restaurant. She said she'd come by my place first. That night, I was more cleaned up than usual, dressed nicely but not overly so. When she showed up, my jaw practically hit the floor. She walked in wearing a beautiful evening dress and makeup, unusual for her. She looked absolutely stunning, and I must have been slack-jawed for a moment. We exchanged some compliments, small talk, but I was still nervous and she wasn't pushing any boundaries. Dinner turned out to be incredible. The restaurant had a live jazz group playing, and the ambience was perfect. She confided that this was the first real adult social outing she'd had in years that didn't involve her daughter. I realized it had been about as long for me. We spent the meal laughing, joking, sharing casual touches, but I couldn't seem to work up the nerve to really say what I wanted. I was afraid to ruin that perfect moment. After dinner, as we stood up to leave, something inside me snapped, and I just thought, screw it. When we walked back to the car, I offered her my arm, and she took it, no awkwardness, no words needed. I opened her door, intending to take her back to her car, but as I did, she stopped me. She looked a little nervous and just blurted out that she wanted to kiss me. There hadn't been any alcohol at dinner, so this was all her. I pulled her in, and we kissed. I can barely describe how wonderful it felt to finally touch her like that. We ended up kissing outside the restaurant for at least half an hour, her leaned back against my car under the streetlights. When we finally pulled apart, we just shared these dreamy looks before getting in the car to head back to my place. She held my hand as I drove, and honestly, I don't think I've ever been happier. Once back at my house, I confessed that I'd developed feelings for her a long time ago, but because of everything we'd been through, I didn't want to scare her off. She admitted she'd been carrying a torch for me for about 6 months. Apparently, around the time I started telling her about some disastrous Tinder dates, she started feeling jealous and angry, and that made her realize she'd developed feelings for me, too. As it turns out, I'd held back because of her late husband and she'd held back because she was worried I'd see too much of my ex-wife, her sister, in her and come to resent her for it. After we got back inside, I invited her in. We fought the urge to run straight to the bedroom and instead just sat together snuggled up on the couch, talking about what it would take to build a relationship that could actually work. There were some really teary moments as we talked about her late husband, where she is with her grief. I told her I didn't want to rush her. I said I'd wait as long as she needed, that I wasn't going anywhere. She told me that she feels ready to love again, and that she was long past feeling guilty for having feelings toward me, though it was something she struggled with for a while. We talked about the tough questions, too. She brought up her sister, asking what we'd do if my ex ever reappeared, if she tried to get back into my kids' lives, or came back reformed and apologetic. Would I consider taking her back? I told her that's a hard no. I've forgiven my ex for cheating, but I'll never forgive her for what she did to my son. He used to be such a happy, sunshiny kid, but as her addiction and lashing out got worse, it really affected him. He's doing better now, but for a long time, his behavior worried me deeply. Sil was concerned about how he might react to us, since he's old enough to know what's going on. I told her not to worry, not to say anything that might embarrass him, but I do remember a recent conversation where he told me once that he wished his aunt was his mom instead. We promised to take things slow and not rush anything, but soon our resolve faded, and we finally let ourselves be together in every way. After years of longing, waking up and being able to touch her face in the morning, it was a fantasy come true. Moving forward, we're planning to set aside date nights and build on the strong foundation we already have. When it comes time to tell our families, we'll do it together. Right now, I'm savoring the fact that after 2 years of wishing she was mine, she finally is. I'm determined not to mess it up. Next weekend, the plan is to have a family dinner with my in-laws. If it feels right, we're going to pull my Mill and Phil aside and tell them the truth, that we care deeply for each other and intend to be together romantically. They've always loved me and my kids. While they're not thrilled about the choices their eldest daughter has made, they saw how hard I tried to make things work and how much I struggled after she left. If I'm honest with them about being in love with their youngest daughter, I really think they'll understand. After all, we already spend plenty of time together, and her mother's been hinting for a while that she thinks we've been dating secretly anyway. So that's where things stand for now. Update 2. I forgot to mention, I'm referring to my ex-wife as Jessica and my sister-in-law, who I used to just call Sil, as Sylvia, because, well, it's fitting and a bit funny. So, we finally told everyone. For the most part, things went over better than I expected. With our kids spending the day at my in-laws, Sylvia and I decided it was time to see my parents together. They'd met her a handful of times before, but never really got to know her, since our two families rarely crossed paths. At least they recognized her. My dad's not exactly the sentimental type, so I couldn't read his reaction, but my mother seemed fully on board. She asked, "Does Jess know?" I told her honestly, I haven't spoken with Jessica in 4 years, and Sylvia hasn't heard from her in 2. We said we'd cross that bridge when we got there. Other than that, my parents just seemed glad for me. Yesterday, We attended a small family gathering for Labor Day at my in-laws. We knew the mood would be a bit cooler since everyone there is also related to my ex-wife. My parents did us a big favor by taking the kids to the zoo and out for ice cream. Walking into that party hand in hand, it felt like so much was telling me not to do this. Everyone immediately asked where the kids were. Still, I took Sylvia's hand, and together we told them the kids weren't there because we wanted to share that we're now a couple. The group was small, only about 8 people, but it felt like I was announcing it to a stadium. Honestly, I'm not sure what I expected, but several of Sylvia's aunts were thrilled. They gave us hugs. At first, no one mentioned my ex-wife. Most were just happy because they'd assumed Sylvia would never date again. It was only my mother-in-law who made things awkward. She announced to everyone that she already knew we were together because I'm always giving Sylvia puppy dog eyes and revealed that Sylvia talked about me nonstop. She then asked, almost jokingly, how long we'd been secretly dating. I told her honestly, only about a week. She scoffed, saying she didn't think starting a relationship off by hiding it was the smartest move. She even accused, half jokingly, that Sylvia and I snuck off at a pool party in June to smooch. After the party, Sylvia's parents sat us down and wanted to know just how serious we were, and they echoed my parents' question, did my ex-wife know? I told them no, and that her opinion really shouldn't matter after she abandoned her family 4 years ago. They insisted they'd be more comfortable if I told Jessica myself that I'm now dating her little sister. They seemed very anxious that Jess might return, sober, renewed, ready to make amends, and might fall apart if she learned about us. It sounded like they knew something I didn't. And as it turns out, they did. Jess has been calling and talking to her parents for about a year. They never told me, and that honestly hurt. Sylvia was deeply upset too, because Jess hasn't reached out to her even once after her husband's death. They showed me Jess's Facebook, the one I'm blocked from, and there she is, looking healthy, not like the shell of the person who left us. Seeing her like that didn't hurt the way I thought it might. In fact, it brought a bit of relief to both me and Sylvia. Sylvia's parents hid their contact because Jess is ashamed of what she's done. She feels she deserves to lose her kids and can't face us after everything. They gave me her number and asked me to call her, to at least have that conversation. I told them that my feelings for Sylvia are completely real, and there's no chance I'd ever reconcile with Jess. My father-in-law seemed to understand, but my mother-in-law still looked like she was hoping for a miracle. Afterwards, Sylvia and I talked. Though we've already had the conversation about what we'd do if Jess returned, it felt different with the new information. I told Sylvia that she has my whole heart, that what I feel for her is deeper and more real than anything I ever felt for my ex-wife. The whole situation became too much for her. She cried from the stress, the secrets, the disappointment in her parents, and her anger at her sister for not calling. She admitted to being afraid I might turn away from her if Jess did return. I promised her that will never happen. It took long hugs and a lot of kisses for both of us to really believe in the moment that we're in this together, but by the time we went to pick up the kids, we were holding hands and feeling more connected than ever. Sylvia's been spending most nights at my place since we got together, and to keep things discreet, I've been quietly setting my alarm for 5 in the morning and slipping onto the couch before the kids wake up. But the morning after we told the adults, we decided it was time to tell the little ones what was happening. Our daughters didn't really understand the situation, just that they'll get to play together more often. My son, though, needed a private talk. I pulled him aside, just the two of us, and asked how he felt about everything. He wanted to know if we'd eventually all live together, and I told him that maybe someday we would. He then asked if this meant his aunt was now his stepmom, and I told him he could call her whatever he felt comfortable with, and we'd respect it because we both love him. That's when the tough questions started, about his mother, things he had never asked before. I answered as honestly as I could. He knows a little about drugs from school programs, so I finally gave him some truth. His mom had problems, she made bad choices. Then he asked me the question that shattered my heart, why his mother didn't love him. I assured him the best I could that she did love him, but sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they love. He asked me directly if I still loved her. I told him I hope for her to get better and I don't want her to be sick anymore, but she hurt both of us so badly that I can't love her like I once did. I'm not sure he understood all of it, but I tried to give him the most loving and honest answer I could. Honestly, since Sylvia's been with us, my son has been far happier, less withdrawn, more outgoing, always trying to impress her in those little ways I used to with my own mom. At the end of the day, I still have to make that call to my ex. That moment looms over me, but, with Sylvia by my side, being able to hold her and kiss her at night, I finally feel joy again, something I hadn't realized had been missing for so long. We're doing all that ridiculous, happy young love stuff. She even started leaving love letters in my work lunchbox, and every moment feels new and hopeful again. I started writing her poems, pouring my feelings into every line, and even had beautiful flowers delivered right to her workplace. She later mentioned with a laugh that several ladies at her office had been urging her for months to ask me out herself, so I figured the flowers would not only make her smile but would also serve as a big, cheeky thank you to those supportive office girls. Their knowing glances and her bright grin were all the confirmation I needed. It's funny how everything seemed to come together at once. Her daughter took to calling me uncle, and, just as naturally, her nieces and nephews started calling her auntie. It was oddly sweet how we all slid into these new roles together, like puzzle pieces finding their fit. As for my ex, well, I don't foresee issues from her for a long while. She's somewhere in Vegas now, living a life far from mine. Out of curiosity, I did some harmless Facebook sleuthing and found out she's no longer with the guy she left me for. My reaction? Relief, mostly. I feel no urge to reach out. After years of radio silence and her ghosting me so thoroughly, I can't imagine wanting to make her face me or drag her back into the spotlight just to have a deeply uncomfortable conversation. It's not like I can waltz up to her, say, "Hey, you remember me, the guy you abandoned? Yeah, so, we're officially divorced now. Oh, and before you hear it from anyone else, I've been spending a lot of time with your younger sister. You know, the one you used to get jealous about." The thought alone makes me wince. No, it's better to let sleeping dogs lie. I can't say enough good things about therapy, especially for my son. His therapist is just amazing with kids. My boy used to be so quiet, keeping everything bottled up. But now, after his sessions, he comes out brimming with ideas and stories, sharing exercises his therapist suggested and chattering about whatever's on his mind. It's like a little light's flicked on in him. Every so often, if he asks, I'll join him for part of the session, but, honestly, he enjoys going on his own most of the time now. He's growing into such a confident, thoughtful kid. If my ex ever does decide to resurface, especially if she wants to be around these children again, we'll need to sit down for some very serious conversations. I'll fight for what's best for my son, I owe him that much. For now, though, things feel right. The past is behind me, the future's wide open, and I'm finally happy where I am. Update 3. Back in September, I found myself finally picking up the phone to talk to my ex-wife. Her life had spiraled out of control for so long, and I'd heard she was in a better place, so I picked up the call not knowing quite what to expect. At this point, she was 8 months clean, working through recovery. She told me everything this time, the details of her affair, how she got hooked on drugs. Honestly, it wasn't anything I wanted to hear, but she was fighting to put herself back together, and even after everything she did to me and the kids, I still found myself worrying about her. I know I shouldn't, but I do. During our conversation, I decided it was time to tell her about Sylvia and me. She was absolutely stunned. When I first met my ex, she was 19 and Sylvia was 14, so in her mind, she always saw Sylvia as the kid sister, and to be fair, that's exactly how I used to refer to her. It took a moment for her to process that her sister is now a grown woman, who went on to get married and have a child. Once it registered that Sylvia was no longer just a kid, those early moments where my ex hinted I was a creep stopped. She asked if I ever had feelings for Sylvia while we were married, and I made it clear that I hadn't. Talk shifted to the kids, and she broke down often, crying and expressing regret. She admitted she had no idea how she could ever face them again. I wanted to offer her reassurance, but deep down, I knew I couldn't give her any impression that I wanted her back in their lives. At most, we could be cordial, friendly, even, but I'm not stupid, there have to be boundaries. Later, Sylvia and my ex talked, too. I didn't eavesdrop on purpose, but I caught a few pieces of their conversation and got the rest from Sylvia afterward. Turns out my ex had been arrested for breaking and entering that same week and spent some time in jail. She didn't even know Sylvia's husband had passed away until a couple weeks after the funeral. By then, she felt that saying anything would only make things worse between them. Things went better than I could have ever expected. Now, Sylvia, the kids, and I spend most days together, and for the first time in years, I'm genuinely happy. My son and daughter have absolutely blossomed under the extra motherly attention, and every day I learn more about my little niece. Life feels busy, but it's good. I'm so glad I found the nerve to take a chance on Sylvia. I love her so much. There was such a long stretch of my life where I felt completely alone, without a romantic partner. I genuinely forgot what it felt like to be in love, or to feel loved. I didn't even realize how alone I was until suddenly I wasn't anymore. We played Scrabble last night, something simple, but it made me ridiculously happy. I can hardly remember the last time I felt that kind of pure, uncomplicated joy. Sylvia's been seeing a therapist since her husband passed, both for managing day-to-day life and for grief counseling. I've joined her at a few sessions when she asked. It's helped both of us. Her late husband was a very good friend of mine, and Sylvia, of course, loved him deeply. For a while, there was a lingering sense of guilt between us for coming together after his passing. That's something we're still working through, but each day it gets a little easier. Our two families have nearly merged into one. We're even thinking about shopping for a place big enough for everyone. These days, Sylvia and her daughter spend most nights at my place. Our girls are over the moon at the thought of being sisters now. For the first time, I feel like we're the family I always dreamed of having, happy, whole, and moving forward, together. Update 4. It's hard to believe it's been almost a year since Sylvia, my former sister-in-law, made the decision to start dating again. For anyone who doesn't know the backstory, I have 2 children from my marriage to Sylvia's sister, my ex-wife. That marriage unraveled due to an explosive combination of cheating, drug use, and child abuse. My ex disappeared to another state with her new lover, leaving everything and everyone behind. Through it all, I managed to stay on great terms with her family, who wholeheartedly supported me. Sylvia and her late husband became especially close after the split, but tragedy struck when he died unexpectedly in a workplace accident. In the years after his passing, Sylvia and I started spending more and more time together, mostly because our daughters are inseparable best friends. Over time, that closeness blossomed into something deeper, and before we realized it, we both had feelings for each other. Fast forward a year, Sylvia and I are now living together, and I couldn't imagine a happier life. We're even house hunting together, searching for our next chapter. Life at home now feels whole. Our kids thrive under the care of 2 full-time parents. Our daughters call each other sisters, and my son's drawn into the fold just the same. They bicker, tease, support, and love each other like true siblings. It's funny, actually, how my son refers to Sylvia as mom when talking to teachers or friends, but can't break the habit of calling her auntie directly to her face. The girls do the same with me, still calling me uncle, which has led to some hilarious confusion when we meet new people and share our story. Since all this change, we've barely heard from my ex-wife. From what little I've gathered, she's doing better on her own, holding down a decent job, staying clean, and settling into life with a boyfriend. Part of me dreads the thought of her re-entering our kids' lives, but if she continues getting her life on track, it'll become harder to justify keeping the door closed. Not just for legal reasons, but morally as well. Sylvia and I aren't looking forward to that day, but for now, it's not an immediate worry. Her parents, who at first worried us might try to meddle or push her sister back into our lives, have stopped prodding. They've actually become supportive, eager to babysit our kids on weekends, and my kids were already used to those sleepovers before Sylvia and I became a couple. It's become a blessing in disguise. Friday nights and most of Saturday are reserved for date nights and stolen moments of much-needed alone time with Sylvia. All our mutual friends were pretty floored when they realized Sylvia and I had gotten together, but their reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. Most try to avoid mentioning my ex, but of course, her name surfaces every now and then. Underneath it all, they're just happy to see us happy. There's another family I don't mention often enough, Sylvia's late husband's family. Her daughter still visits them regularly, and they've embraced our new relationship. His father, in fact, told me, point blank, that he was genuinely relieved it was me helping raise his granddaughter. He admitted he'd dreaded the idea of some stranger coming into her life. We haven't had many full family gatherings, thanks to COVID, but when we do, they're included, and always will be. Dealing with Sylvia's grief and memories has been an important part of our journey. She's taken me with her to a therapy session before, and we talk openly about her late husband's enduring presence in our lives. Removing her wedding band was a somber milestone. She did it on her own, out of respect for me, but I insisted it wasn't necessary. I even told her that if we ever get married, she'd only need to find a free finger. That conversation led her to start wearing her ring on a necklace instead, and now, she wears an engagement ring from me. As for the proposal, no over-the-top public spectacle. Just a quiet, emotional moment full of tearful hugs and kisses. My son has had a pretty good year. He's sociable by nature, and it's made me so happy to see him embrace Sylvia and his new extra sister. Of course, COVID robbed him of a lot of his favorite group activities. No matter how many games of catch I play with him, it's just not the same as being with a team of friends. He gets frustrated about it sometimes, but overall, he's much healthier and happier now. He gravitates toward Sylvia, whatever she's doing, he wants to be a part of it. Even when my ex-wife lived with us, Sylvia was always his favorite visitor. My daughter, on the other hand, has always been a bit of a daddy's girl. Early on, she got jealous when Sylvia and I held hands, demanding to hold my hand herself, which would set off a chain of bickering with her cousin, now her sister, over who got my other hand. Kids being kids, that kind of drama fizzled out as they got used to our new family dynamic. Sylvia and I make a point of carving out special time for our own daughters, so nobody has to compete for attention. We haven't picked an exact wedding date yet, maybe sometime in 2022. The guilt I felt mostly came before Sylvia and I got together. Her late husband was one of my best friends, close enough to be considered my adopted brother. I cheered them on when they got married, and when she got pregnant, I looked forward to us being those two cool dads everyone in the family talks about. I'd show him little baby care tricks, and his appreciation forged an even tighter bond between us. When my ex left, I felt it was my responsibility to help those two with anything parenting related. The night Sylvia's husband died, I instinctively became protective of her. For the longest time, I thought my duty was to keep her and her daughter safe, honoring his memory, until someday, she found someone new. When I first caught myself feeling attracted to her, guilt took over. I've always loved Sylvia in one way or another, so the emotional connection didn't bother me so much, but admitting I wanted more, that was much harder to accept. We both wrestled with guilt after we first slept together, something we explored deeply in counseling. Now, looking at our family, seeing everyone thriving, I realize how far we've come since those nights lost in heartbreak. All I need from Sylvia is her love, and no regrets. That's enough.